Welcome to this Smart Talk Live today on the legal aspect of non-compliant gas parts. Today it's being held in conjunction with the Baxi Group and Gilmore-Libison. So welcome to this Smart Talk Live today on non-compliant gas parts. I'm delighted to be working with the Baxi Group and EGL, Gilmore-Libison Solicitors. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rob Orme.
Thanks, Paul. I'm new product development engineer for Baxi Genuine Parts, but also take care of investigating non-compliant gas parts.
And Sarah Bingham.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bingham. I'm a commercial litigation solicitor specialising in regulatory work and commercial law.
Thank you, Sarah. And finally, Peter Atkins.
Thank you, Paul. I'm Peter Atkins. I'm the Director of Regulatory Services at Gilmore-Libison Solicitors based in Birmingham. I also look after the legal helpline for the CIPHE.
Thank you, Peter. So today we're going to be really focusing on non-compliance. Across the world, there's been quite a large increase in counterfeit goods. It's not, things like handbags, for example. I could be sitting on a beach, I could buy a lovely Gucci handbag. It wouldn't be spelt right, but these goods are available everywhere. But today we're going to be focusing on a lot more serious aspects to counterfeit goods.
Yeah, and as you said, Paul, that's absolutely fine with a handbag and a watch and you know what you're getting. But with increased consumer savviness and engineers trying to cut costs, putting a gas appliance at that sort of risk is very dangerous. These are dangerous bits of equipment.
Yeah, so Peter, what do you think about this?
Well, as you say, it's with your Gucci handbags and the watches, nobody is actually in any danger on these things. You know what you're buying and it is a cheap product and you expect it not to work.
Yes.
However, when you start bolting them onto boilers and they're cheap replacement parts, then people's lives are at risk.
So joking aside, Peter, we talk about these handbags, on the beach, but we're talking about people's lives here. So on a serious note, I'm a little bit concerned for the consumer. So why are we seeing such a rise, Rob?
I think it's mainly down to people becoming more savvy with using the internet. They'll find out what they need and then go search on the internet and see how much they can get it for. The thing is, the normal consumer doesn't know whether what they're buying on the internet is a real or a fake.
And the installers might not either.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the problem is identifying.
Yeah. Okay, so as I assume it's a responsibility of the installer, Sarah, to make sure that what he's buying is actually not only fit for purpose, but also it's safe.
It is, and the liability will fall on the installer. But one thing, as we all know, because of the internet, people are price driven. So one of the things that is we're seeing a rise in is that people are buying cheap goods, and invariably, if it is cheap and it is too cheap, it normally is too good to be true, and that's a big issue.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to obviously look at with these training videos.
So focusing on these non-compliant gas parts, let's just say that a non-compliant gas part entered the market, an installer installed it, didn't realise. The consumer was none the wiser. 12 months later, another installer comes out to service that boiler. He then, again, doesn't spot that it's a fraudulent, potentially, and also unsafe part, services the boiler, off he goes on his way. There's a fatality following that. So bear in mind that the first installer was the individual who installed it. Another installer's come out, or a service engineer has serviced it, not spotted it. Who is liable?
It would be the last person who's touched that boiler that would be liable.
So that's quite scary, Peter.
Yeah. It is very scary indeed, because you may not be able to recognise these products as being counterfeit. You may well think they're genuine originals.
Okay.
So it can be very difficult.
Well, and an engineer is often wants to do the job very quickly, so they don't want to be checking every part that's in that appliance.
That's correct, yeah. But still, there lies the problem. So we need to get to the bottom of this.
Absolutely.
The way around it, of course, is that the onus is upon the installer to only work with reputable manufacturers, and the manufacturers take such care in sourcing their products and their quality control that it lessens the impact on the public.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think also we should look at the other end of the scale on this, because hopefully most installers are not dealing with equipment which is going to explode and be fatal. These compliant parts or non-compliant parts, they may not be dangerous as such, but on the normal run of things, surely this affects their warranty, doesn't it, Rob?
Yes, absolutely, and I don't think a lot of consumers realise that. But there does seem to be an increase in the trend of an installer coming to repair a boiler and then the consumer then going away and saying, well, I'll get that part instead of the actual installer. So, but the consumer has very little knowledge of what's a genuine part or aware that this is even happening in the market.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I assume Baxi give a long-term warranty on their products.
That's right.
Boilers. I mean, how long are we talking about?
Well, to be competitive with other companies, we're offering now 7 to 10 year warranties.
Wow, that's excellent.
That's excellent indeed. But if someone came along with a spare part after year 3 or 4, then this could invalidate that warranty for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And that consumer loses out. So I would like to sort of move on to how do we identify these counterfeit parts. I mean, what I have here is actually a counterfeit part that's been there. So this is the counterfeit one, and this is the real one of the Baxi fan. This is a really important part of the boiler. This exhausts these dangerous gases outside. So I suppose as an installer, sometimes some installers will go, well, I can clearly see the difference here, but other installers might just think, well, that's a change of design. So how would you identify, or could you tell, you know, the CIPHE members and the wider industry how you could spot the difference, shall we call it?
I think there's some very obvious parts about this. First of all, we haven't got the top impeller or the bottom impeller. Instead, we've just got a spinning disc. Now, these impellers are very important because they cool down the motor and stop it from overheating. Another point to make about that is that there is actually no thermal cutout on this. So if this does get hotter and hotter, it will just continue that exponentially. Another point to make is that it's got lots of different holes. Now, a genuine part will only have the holes that you need to use, and that's very important in terms of fitting it to the actual boiler. And another point you might want to make is
the other thing here is that you will see there is a CE marking. Now, a genuine product will have a CE mark on, but it will be indelible, which means that it cannot be removed. On this counterfeit part, you can see that I can easily peel off the CE marking. That's just a quick way of checking. Some of them are obviously much better than this, but you can see on the original that it's an indelible label.
Okay. And I know it sounds silly, but the brown box.
Well, that's another issue, Paul. With all reputable manufacturers, they will have their logos, their badge markings, and everything will be traceable. So you'll have the manufacturer's address, details, serial number of the product. Yeah. And if it comes in a brown paper box, and then you have to be aware of the fact this could likely be a fake.
And what's relevant today is the Baxi Group. You don't sell parts in brown boxes?
No, absolutely. Everything would have a Baxi Genuine Parts logo, stamp of approval on the side.
I'm an installer. I have a Baxi boiler I'm working on. I go online maybe and I order what I believe to be the correct fan. It turns up in a brown box straight away. If it's a Baxi boiler, it's not a Baxi part.
So, Rob, if I'm an installer and I'm taking out a part which looks like that, and I'm installing one like this, there's obviously, you can just see there are major differences between them. So that should start to alert me that could well be a non-genuine or a counterfeit part. But obviously you develop products as you go through, so is there someone I can ring just quickly to check that?
Absolutely, and I mean sometimes we do change a product. It could just be a different colour, and we do get queries about that. But Baxi Genuine Parts has a dedicated helpline that you can call up and query whether you think something's real or counterfeit.
So it would be very easy, just make the call, check it out, 5 minutes will reassure me or get me worried.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that is quite funny actually, the word genuine. Baxi Genuine Parts.
Yeah.
So Sarah, we look at liability. So we've spoke briefly about the liability of the installer. So it's incumbent on him to make sure he has the correct parts. But let's go beyond that. Let's say there's a fatality here. Yes, we know that installer could be liable, through manslaughter. But let's touch on corporate manslaughter, the company that have fraudulently badged that product, brought it in, sold it, and it's worked its way through. Where do they stand?
Well, they're obviously responsible, and there's a number of issues here, both from civil and criminal liability. But the most important thing for an installer to consider is that if he only uses reputable parts and reputable manufacturers, then he'll sleep better at night.
Yes.
The liability issues are far-ranging. The fact that a component part like this is potentially the most dangerous. If that is defective, then somebody is going to die. And yes, there will be prosecutions, and they will be from trading standards down to full-blown police investigations with the health and safety executive. And it's best to always think that when one is looking at a component part, to get it from a reputable manufacturer.
Okay. So I suppose through contracts, on previous Smart Tool videos, we spoke about indemnifying yourself or the installer against the subcontractor. Whether you indemnify yourself within contract of purchase of product from another company, that doesn't actually, in law, I assume, completely remove your liability if that product is unsafe or for. I mean, what's your thoughts?
There is an issue. We look at causation, and we look at effectively what that means is the link in the chain between each party that is involved, and that may start from the installer to a subcontractor to the manufacturer.
Okay.
And unfortunately, everybody can be involved in that causation line of liability. But it is, again, the only thing that we can say is that if you stay with reputable manufacturers and you take the time to look at and source your parts and products from reputable parties, then you are limiting your liability and you're limiting your exposure.
Yes. So.
And we go back to the point that if it is too cheap and you've bought it off the internet, it's likely to be too cheap and too good to be true.
Yeah. The importer, he's knowingly brought in a fraudulent product and also a product that is clearly unsafe, and he feeds it into the market. Well, I assume in the eyes of the law, he is the manufacturer. It's not. He can't pass the buck abroad. He knowingly brings that into the UK. He is the manufacturer.
That's absolutely right, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate that by badging up your products from overseas, that you take on the role as the manufacturer.
Okay.
All products have to be compliant into the UK market, but what is important here is that if you are bringing an unsafe product into the UK, then trading standards will undoubtedly be involved. The consumer will know that the product is defective very early on, and hopefully it's just a small issue. But with these kind of component parts or component products, you're looking at very serious injury, if not fatalities.
Okay.
And what will happen from there is that the health and safety executive will be involved, there will be a police investigation, and then trading standards will prosecute, and you can end up spending time behind bars.
So the CIPHE, the Chartered Institute of Plumbing and Heating Engineering's position here is we want that consumer protected. So it's important that these parts do not enter the market. It's not fair on the installer, number one, and it is definitely not fair on the consumer. We're talking the importance towards the consumer here. I'm keen, and especially I know our members and the installers and industry as a whole, where next?
Well, it's a multifaceted approach. So as Baxi Genuine Parts, we do several campaigns which target 3 areas. So one is the installer, making sure they understand their liability.
Yes.
Secondly, it's the merchants to make sure they're selling safe parts. And then thirdly, it's reaching the consumer and making sure they're aware of the problem, which is often the most difficult.
Yeah. So industry needs to get together on this one. We need to get together because ultimately it's people's lives at stake. So we want the industry to get together, don't we? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for today, Rob. We're in front of your Eco Blue advanced boiler here, your combi boiler.
That's right.
Any other sort of parts you think might be counterfeit?
So we're seeing a lot of plate heat exchangers, PCBs, thankfully no gas valves at the minute, and fans. But the point is that because of the way boiler's made up, everything has another knock-on effect to another part. So if there's one counterfeit part, such as the PCB, that can intrude on other genuine parts within the boiler.
Yeah. Okay, so a PCB, you know, the settings within that PCB, if something might be out, it could affect the gas valve.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So the settings on this could open up the gas valve far too much, which could cause incomplete combustion.
Yeah, or even not allow the fan to rotate as fast as it should do.
Yes.
In case it's not exhausting as much
Yeah.
gas as it should do.
Right, okay, well thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Baxi Group today for taking part in this excellent Smart Talk Live on non-compliant gas parts. Yes, it's been an eye-opener for me and the CIPHE today, realising that you could be installing illegal, dangerous products, counterfeit products. So, I'm flabbergasted. Anyway, for us and for the industry as a whole, we need to stop this. This cannot go on. So really, as an industry, we need to work together to stamp this out, because our members, the installers at the CIPHE, and as a whole, the installers, it is not fair on them to have to keep their eye out for these products, even though they could be liable. So, and I think education, we need to educate the wider industry, the consumer, to prevent this from growing. So thank you very much.